hometown. Memories of phrase from my hometown.
It's wonderful to see you. Thank you, Jayatma, for giving such a thoughtful introduction. Mr. President, dear friends, let me begin by reminding you that it was on this day, a year ago, that President Santos learned he would receive the Nobel Prize for his work in ending 50 years of civil conflict in Colombia. With all that the country has achieved, holding a discussion on peace and reconciliation here in Bogotá has a particular resonance. Allow me to applaud One Young World for organizing this session on such a critical subject. Throughout this summit, you have brought your youthful energy, passion, insight into making the world a better place. As I said at the opening of the One Young World Summit, we live in troubled times. And I read with dismay the One Young World survey of 2,000 young people around the world, in which more than half of the respondents said they had experienced conflict during their lifetime, and 60% lived in fear of terrorism in their own countries. Across the world, armed conflicts rage, killing thousands, displacing millions, and challenging our collective conscience. Violent conflict causes a great deal of human suffering. It is not only that it robs people of their lives, but disfigures society in many ways. Armed conflict disrupts agriculture, as farmers are forced to flee their farms and see their harvest burnt or confiscated. Hunger and despair usually follow. Health systems are overwhelmed, and without access to medicine, food, and clean water, diseases spread rapidly, killing many more than guns and bullets. And conflict also damages the internal world of individuals and societies. The trauma of seeing loved ones killed, of fleeing one's home, can last a lifetime. Violence can sharpen the differences between us, including and leading to some to believe that coexistence with the other is impossible. But why does conflict occur? The causes are complex and contextual, but allow me to highlight a few general points. When we examine today's global landscape, we can see the political factors that are often behind these wars and are the major driver of conflict. Too many regimes fail to represent the needs and hopes of their people. Conflict is often caused by having unequal access to political power. It follows that a good way to avoid conflict is to encourage inclusive democracy, which gives everyone a say in decisions that affect their lives. Citizens must believe that they are their nation's own agents of change, and that the ballot box is their strongest tool. The heart of democracy is the political right of the people to be equally represented and trust in the decisions that their leaders make. Another driver of conflict is economic inequality. When resources are not equitably shared and opportunities are not made accessible to all, grievances and resentment is nurtured. Globalization has integrated the world's economies and societies more than ever, creating unprecedented wealth. But it is also generating a backlash because the benefits are not fairly shared and the gap between the rich and the poor has widened. These trends influence a third driver of conflict, social fragmentation. In the developed and developing worlds, polarization in society is rising, while trust in institutions and government is eroding. As the old certainties are undermined by globalization, too many are retreating into primal identities, some real, some imagined, as defense against uncertainty and fear. Populist and xenophobic groups are taking advantage of this fear to reject the ties that bind us across religious, national, racial, and civic divides. In doing so, they undermine pluralist norms which can help maintain peaceful, diverse, and flourishing society. Above all these drivers of conflict is climate change, perhaps the single greatest threat we face today. Climate change is rendering social, political, and economic challenges more immediate and more complex as it generates pressures on states and on societies. The global and national response to these pressures will test states and societies with the risk that some of them will resort to violence to cope with the change. We must accept that the solution to today's wars and conflicts must be political. Military force is not the answer. Since taking office, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has made conflict prevention a cornerstone of his strategy. During my own time as Secretary General, I too strove to mitigate, end, and prevent conflicts. I have continued that effort. Just a day ago, my foundation held a symposium here in Bogotá on reconciliation and how to achieve it and to sustain it. And it brought together concerned individuals and experts from around the world. Allow me to share with you some of the elements I have found to be most valuable in building peace. First, trust is an essential element for getting beyond conflict. It must be built step by step into a momentum of confidence that takes the peace process forward. Second, if a peace process is to succeed, it must be inclusive and based on a frank dialogue among all protagonists. Third, the voices of the victims must be heard and heard clearly. Justice need not be an impediment to peace. It is an essential element. My advice is that we must be ambitious enough to pursue both justice and peace, and wise enough to know when and how to do so. We all want peace. But peace is a complex process. I believe that lasting peace requires reconciliation. And reconciliation is a process, an aspiration, and an outcome, not a single event. So it requires patience and understanding. It is the rebuilding and revitalization of relationships. Relationships between individuals, groups, and between society and state. But in every post-conflict context, there are unique characteristics, so there is no single recipe for successful reconciliation. Clearly, the path to peace is fraught with difficulties and dilemmas, but the reward is worth the struggle. An inspiring example of this fact can be found right here in Colombia, and I hope you would take time to talk to your Colombian friends. The success of the Colombian peace process drives home a message I want to underline. We must never lose hope. We must never lose hope. We need hope, but also strong leadership. And this is where everyone I see in front of me today can and must play a role. You can make a difference, each and every one of you, individually and collectively. During this session, you will hear from your peers and from your elders. Many will speak directly to their own experiences with violence and conflict, bringing unique insights into the nature of conflict and the road to reconciliation. At the global level, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Climate Agreement offer a compelling roadmap on how to go forward. It will be up to you to absorb the lessons you hear today and apply them in your communities. And let me repeat, you are never too young to lead. You must remember that, and you should act and take charge where you can. I would urge you all to remember the words of Dr. Luther Martin King Jr., who reminded us that in spite of temporary victories, violence never brings permanent peace. So put your remarkable energy, your insight, your passion in the service of reconciliation and peace. It can start at the most personal level, but small steps lead towards a better future. The path to peace is yours to construct and to pursue. Thank you very much.